Hello guys and welcome to HJW Gaming. Following on from my two previous videos of both evil and good side tier 3 commanders that I think you should include in your formation, I am today going to be taking a look at evil side tier 2's. I really hope that you enjoy. So first up, we're going to head down to the southeastern region to take a look at the Shadow. Now the Shadow is a fantastic tier 2 commander, primarily focused around dealing DD damage, meaning that he deals commander damage himself. Now he achieves this partly through having a pretty good damage stat, but primarily through the boosts that he gets in his skills towards his normal attack damage. The first of those we're going to look at is his Respect 5 skill, Shape of the Void. Now Shape of the Void, when you push it up to 10 skill points, gives him a 90% chance in the first 6 rounds to gain follow-up on all of his normal attacks. Additionally, with 5 skill points, you gain plus 10 attack, which helps to push that commander damage up. And with 10 skill points, you also get plus 15% normal attack damage. And of course, that'll apply to both attacks, including the follow-up, if you do trigger that 90% chance. So it's almost like a plus 30% damage boost during those first 6 rounds. Now that synergizes really well with his top Respect 0 skill, which is Undertaker. Undertaker, once you apply 10 skill points to that, means that you can deal 120% normal attack damage, and that also applies to 3 enemy formations. So initially it's 2, but increased to 3 with the 5 skill points. So 120% damage to 3 enemy formations. So basically every time you deal a normal attack, you're applying 360% damage. And that's before you consider the possible follow-up from Shape of the Void, and also the 30% boost to each of those as a result of the 10 skill points into Shape of the Void. Lastly, you do get the attack boost as well of plus 5 with 10 skill points, but that synergy between normal attack damage buffs and increasing the number of normal attacks you have means that he can deal an enormous amount of damage consistently every single round, provided the commander is not stunned or had madness applied. If you have any spare skill points, it couldn't hurt to put them into Hunting Expert, as this makes his attack stack every single round, increasing your damage up to 5 stacks. And of course, with the number of attacks that you're dishing out every round, those stacks will rack up to 5 very, very quickly. If you have a very high respect level, you can also get bonus initiative and defense. But of course, at the minute, we're primarily focused on the Shadow's damage, so you don't have to worry too much about that. It's mainly about Shape of the Void and Undertaker. Now, looking into how I would recommend gearing the Shadow. First up, I'll take a look at weaponry. And weaponry, I would recommend, probably the best weaponry for physical damage DD commanders is the Axe of Khazad-dûm, the 2.0 version. The reason for this is it gives a very strong damage buff. So this is 7 to 15 and this is unrefined. The more you refine it, the more damage boost you will give the Shadow, so you can get an enormous amount of maximum damage. On top of that, it also increases his attack by the most of any item, so again pushes up his damage even further. I'm actually going to look at accessory next. I'll come back to why that is in a moment. But for accessory, you want again that increased damage as much as possible from the buff, and so I would recommend the Palantir of Orthanc. The reason for that is it gives a good damage increase, but on top of that, it's also the accessory that grants the highest amount of commander attack. Now, chest piece wise, you have a good few options here actually with physical damage DD commanders. For 2.0 gear, I believe the Warborn Battle Plate is the item that gives the best amount of attack possible, so that would be what I would recommend if you're looking for 2.0 gear. However, on a lot of commanders at the moment, the buff on armour actually gives you additional HP, and that's not massively valuable for a commander you're looking to increase their attack and damage as much as possible. You can actually sacrifice this and a little bit of survivability for only your commander. You can sacrifice it for more attack from classic 1.0 gear. So in this case, if you're looking to use, say, purple gear, you can use something like the classic Goblin armor with Gallant if you can get it fully refined. So in this case, I have it only 2 times refined, and I get plus 9 attack. If you fully refine it, you get plus 18 attack. Combine that with the bonus 36 commander attack you also get from the armor itself. Fully refined, you can get plus 54 attack, which is more than you can get from any 2.0 gear. And of course, this only costs you purple items, not gold, so you can save gold items for other commanders. So I definitely recommend looking towards using the Goblin Classic armour with Gallant. Headgear, it's a kind of similar story where most of the headgear gives you bonus command or HP, which again isn't valuable as we're looking to push the Shadow's damage as high as possible. So you have a couple of options here. If you're looking for 2.0 gear, you want to use the Cask of Pride. If you strengthen this as much as possible and prioritise here strengthening over refine, as you want that bonus attack, as I said, the bonus HP isn't too valuable, so prioritise strengthening in this case. But if you fully strengthen it, you can get, I believe it's plus 50 attack, which is a huge amount of bonus attack. But if you're looking towards purple items, you can use the classic full helm, which gives almost the same amount of attack plus 45, which is massive, giving you a nice amount of bonus attack for only using purple gear. So that would be my other recommendation. Taking a look at the Shadow's relic slot, if you do have him respect 10, this is the Corrupted Hauberk. Now this is a decent item, but not necessarily essential. The bonus HP, as I said, doesn't matter too much. The bonus attack is good as it will push his damage up, but the more you strengthen this, because the strength and buffs are randomised, it's unlikely you're going to get more than plus 6 or plus 12 attack, which is why I say this item isn't essential, as we're more keen on just pushing his attack as high as possible. Focus and defense, again, doesn't really matter. If you're going to use him with this relic, you're going to have to use trolls with him, as the relic's ability is Troll Wall, which means at the start of each round, if you have allied trolls, then the next instance of damage you receive will be negative 6%. Of course, that can be increased as well. So if you use the Shadow with the relic, you're going to have to use trolls, which I think is a little bit limiting. So that's why I think this relic's decent, but it's not necessarily essential. If you can afford to do so, then by all means carry on. But yeah, I don't think it's required. Talking of getting ascended, these are the ascension requirements for the Shadow. Shout out to my fellowship mate Hollow for sending this over, as I don't have mine respect 10 at the moment. But it will cost you 150 shadowy substance and 40 reigns as well, which are the respect items for the Undying. Now what you get in exchange for this, for the Ascension, is you get plus 5 to his damage stat. So that's both the min and his max damage. You get that increased by 5, which is quite a big boost. You know, that's nearly a 20% boost to his damage. And on top of that, you gain kind of 400 HP, 7 initiative, and 3 command, which none of that really matters too much. Of course, what we're focused on is that plus 5 damage. But if you can afford to do so, I would definitely recommend getting the Ascension if you're going to use the Shadow, because that plus 5 damage will massively increase his damage capability. Overall, if you're looking for a good DD commander, I think the Shadow can definitely have a place in your Evil Side formation. Possible synergies. There's not necessarily anyone in particular I'd recommend, as DD commanders kind of can be drag and dropped into formations, to be honest, as they kind of operate well on their own in isolation. But if you were looking for a particular synergy, Sauron can be a very good option, as with the Deceiver skill, you can increase that damage received by 3 enemy formations by up to 10% with 10 skill points, and of course modified by Sauron's focus stat, which tends to be quite good, so you'll actually get more than 10%. And of course this synergizes as well, because if you're applying it to multiple formations, the Shadow's normal attacks are also hitting multiple formations, so that synergy is there to get the maximum amount of damage output. Now, second up on my list, and continuing the trend of DD commanders, we're going to head towards the Misty Mountains for the commander Lurtz. Now, Lurtz is very well known to a lot of people who played very early Rise to War Classic, as he was one of the meta commanders, particularly when he combined with his fantastic formation army composition of Mumakil. Now, he's pretty much back in Rise to War 2.0, primarily because of his skill focus, which is all designed around increasing his commander damage, again making him a fantastic physical DD commander. First up, we'll take a look at Uruk-hai Firstborn. So with 10 skill points, you can deal 300% physical damage twice, and each attack selects a different target within the formation. So you'll inflict 600% damage. That skill has a 2-round cooldown, so will apply every 3 rounds, so you'll get 3 times application of that during the fight. On top of that, if you get 5 skill points in, it increases the damage instances to 3, so you can select it will select a 3rd target. And with 10 skill points, the damage increases with each attack. So once you hit the 3rd, you will get additional damage. This is a brilliant skill, as of course applying 3 times 900% damage. That is a huge amount of additional damage over the duration of a battle. Second skill we're going to look at again is increasing commander damage, and that is Pursuer. Now Pursuer is great as it can, with 10 skill points, apply 400% physical damage to one enemy formation, but it only has a 1 round cooldown, so it actually applies every second round. So you get 5 instances of activation during a full battle. Once you have 5 skill points applied, you actually deal an additional 100% physical damage while attacking, so you get an additional up to 500% now. And with 10 skill points, you get 5 commander initiative, which isn't really very key, just affects the commander's activation order. What we're more interested in is maximising this skill for that maximum amount of physical damage. If you have any remaining skill points, it doesn't really matter too much where you put them. The White Hand can increase attack and defense of your Uruk-hai units, just as long as they're not looking to be healed, and that can be useful if you're using him in an Uruk-hai army. If you're not, you can just apply to Uruk-hai Elite, which just flat out increases the attack of the commander's formation by 2.5, and to be honest, this is the one I'd recommend as it applies to the whole formation, so it means Lurtz himself increases damage as well from that bonus attack. Gear-wise, it's going to be very, very similar to the Shadow, so I'm not going to run over it a second time. You're basically looking to maximise that damage stat at the top is your first priority, and second up, maximise commander attack. So you want something like the Axe of Khazad-dûm. I've spoken through chest, headpieces, accessories. It's all going to be the same. So of course, make sure you consider in your formation what equipment you have before deciding how many DD commanders to put in, as you don't want to put too many physical damage commanders if you've got equipment like me, where you only have, say, one decent item to increase their damage and also increase their attack as well. Looking at Lurtz's relic, this actually is reasonably decent. Commander HP, again, this is pretty much exactly the same stats as the Shadows. That bonus attack will be useful, but you only really get 6 to 12 normally. But still, 6 attack still gives a bit of bonus damage. But his effect, Pin Down, is a lot more useful and is not as limiting as the Shadows. It means that his normal attacks will inflict an additional 20.8% damage. Of course, you can increase that as well. But basically it just gives Lurtz that little bit of extra nice damage boost. Again, this is kind of a mediocre relic. I'd say it's a little bit better than Shadows in my opinion, as it doesn't limit you to trolls, but it's kind of a mediocre relic again. It's not as good as, say, Scalhelm's relic. So I'd pick this up if you can afford it again, but it's, again, not necessarily essential, but it does give him that little bit of useful damage boost. Now, Ascension. What this will end up costing you is it will cost you 150 of Lurtz's respect item, the Unstable Oil, and also 40 Torn Uruk-hai Scribblings. Now, whether you use the Shadow or Lurtz, I would probably recommend looking into what else you use in the rest of your formation, as of course if you use the Undying and therefore need Reigns to get his respect level up, then maybe consider not using the Shadow so you don't spend 40 of that respect item on ascending your Shadow, instead look towards Lurtz. Alternatively, if you use Saruman, maybe look towards using the Shadow and using those Reigns so that you save respect items for your Saruman. Overall, the Ascension benefits are almost exactly the same as the Shadow. You get +5 to the damage, +7 to his focus, and +3 to initiative, along with around 400 HP. Pretty much exactly the same Ascension, but my recommendation will be the same in that if you're going to use Lurtz, same as the Shadow, I would recommend ascending him, as that +5 damage is a huge boost to his damage capability. I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot here, but support for Lurtz, again, DD commanders can kind of work on their own, dropped in isolation. Sauron, I've previously mentioned, would be a good combo, so I tried to come up with something different, and I'd say probably Gandalf the White is another good combination to go with one of these DD commanders. Reason being, his Respect 5 skill, White Rider, means that during the first 3 rounds, the enemy receives an increased 25% damage when that's fully maximised, and that can be increased to 4 rounds as well with 10 skill points put in, and also affects 3 enemy formations. So that additional damage received in the first 3 rounds will get 1 trigger of each of Lurtz's 2 best damage skills, which is Uruk-hai Born and Pursuer. So that definitely gives him a nice good damage boost early on in the battle phase. So yeah, Gandalf the White can be a good combination to support with Lurtz, similar to the Shadow, but personally I think I prefer Sauron as a combination for both of these. Now, for those of you who stuck around until now, my third commander is something a little more out of the ordinary. Unlike the other two, this is not a DD commander. We're actually going to head down to the southern region, and we're going to be taking a look, surprisingly, at Azrukor. Azrukor is a commander who was very little used in the classic game, so it's quite surprising to see him actually being reasonably useful in 2.0. What makes him useful in 2.0 is some of the potential synergies with his Respect 3 skill, which is Raider. Now what Raider does is it gives your commander's formation unit a 50% chance to deal an additional 50% burn damage upon dealing damage. The reason why this has such interesting synergies is the fact that you can have many different ways to increase the number of normal attacks dealt by your commander's unit through granting them follow-up. On top of that, you get, if you input 5 skill points in, you get additional attack. So of course that increases that amount of damage. So if you increase the damage by 5, that 50% burn damage goes up by 2.5, for example. This also synergizes well with his top Respect 0 skill, which is Fleet of Flames, primarily because when you increase this skill to 10 skill points, the burn damage received by 2 enemy formations is increased by 12%. So the damage that you deal through Raider will be increased. Now let's just kind of talk about how we're going to use Azrukor, just to show some of the best synergies you can get. So we're actually going to look at his support first, as it's very key to the way that Azrukor operates. First up, we'll head to the southeastern region and we'll take a look at a commander that will be very familiar with classic gamers, which will be Sunind, but she's very rarely seen now in 2.0. However, she does have fantastic synergy with Azrukor, primarily through her Panther Leader skill. And what Panther Leader does is it means that units in 3 allied formations have a 50% chance to deal 100% poison damage. Now the amount of damage doesn't really matter, it's more the fact that you have a 50% chance for your units to deal additional damage. The reason that that's so useful is, of course, that's another instance of damage for Azrukor's units, which gives you that, again, 50% chance then of dealing additional burn damage. So if you're using Sunind with beasts, you can increase Azrukor's burn damage and you can get a fantastic amount of burn damage from him. So for example, this is just a report I had against a mob, a level 40 mob, but you can see here that the synergy is fantastic, as we do have Azrukor dealing 82,000 damage, and that's just coming from that increased damage from his units as a result of that burn damage. While we're talking about synergies, we'll also look into unit synergy with the Morgul Arbalest. So the Morgul Arbalest has the Dual Blows ability, which gives it a 20% chance of gaining follow-up, meaning it'll attack twice. So if you think about this combination, you have that 20% chance of dealing damage twice. Each time it deals damage, you'll have a 50% chance of that additional burn damage. And on top of that, you're also dealing additional poison damage as a result of Panther Leader from Sunind, and again that will trigger additional burn damage. So these are all possible instances of additional burn damage, which makes Azrukor a fantastic damage dealer, quite surprisingly. Now if you're playing Tactics Evolved, he can be even stronger, as the Arbalest also has the Dispersion ability, meaning that they can hit 3 units during their normal attack phase, and this therefore means 3 additional instances where that burn damage can be inflicted, or 2 additional instances rather. So in Tactics Evolved, this build will be even stronger. But overall, you can get fantastic burn damage when you use this commander unit in synergy with Sunind. Now I'm sure there's more additional supports, but we're actually going to go just look at a second one, and we're going to go east of the Misty Mountains, and we can look at either a Theoden or Eomer. The reason we're looking at Theoden and Eomer is because they again have another skill which can make your units deal damage more often, so that you get more triggers of that burn damage, and that is Eored Leader. In fact, I would recommend running both Theoden and Eomer together with Azrukor if you're looking to get the maximum amount of burn damage as a result of Eored Leader. As long as Azrukor is using a medium unit, or a mounted unit rather, it means that after 3 allied formation mounted units deal damage, they have a 50% chance to deal additional instance of damage. Now if you get multiple instances of Eored Leader, these are multiple additional instances of damage, particularly coming from Azrukor's units, again triggering that additional burn damage. Now this, in my opinion, isn't as strong a build as running Azru Core with Sunind, but if you're looking for an additional build to kind of try or spice up a mounted formation, this can be a fun one to give a try. Now, gear-wise, how would I recommend equipping Azru Core? Now, Azru Core, if you're going to be using it with the Morghul Arbalest and Sunind, which is my, as I said, recommended build, you want to look to boost his range damage as much as possible so that you get those multiple instances of range damage boosted, and because your burn damage is 50% of that damage, you want to basically want the maximum amount of damage possible, so then half of that will be dealt again as burn. And interestingly, the best gear for boosting range damage actually comes in the form of Classic 1.0 gear. If you have the Mirkwood Bow Classic with Ranged Might, I haven't got this fully refined, I've only got it 4 times refined, but with 5 times refined you get bonus 9% range damage, along with of course that plus 3 damage to ranged as well. Combine this with the accessory of fully refined Wizard's Fireworks, we get again plus 3 damage to ranged, plus 9% damage as well. Lastly, the Trapper's Hood Classic again gives plus 3 damage to ranged, so all in we've got plus 9 damage to ranged and plus 18% damage, so we're getting a huge amount of range damage, which then 50% of that is dealt as burn damage. As for chest piece, of course the classic Ranger's Shroud would be best for, again, more additional range damage, but in the case of if you don't have anything else, I've gone here with the classic Ranger, the 2.0 Ranger's Shroud, just to boost that unit attack to again increase damage as much as possible. With him, we're just looking to increase that range damage as much as possible so that we can boost the amount of burn damage that we're dealing, basically. The good thing about Azru Core is you don't require to get him to a high respect level for him to be of use. As I've said, those 2 skills are the only ones that matter, so having him respect 3 will be enough. Of course, the more skill points you have, the kind of more, the quicker he'll become active. You know, the less high level you'll need him in your season for him to become good and active. But both his bottom respect 0 and his respect 5 don't benefit massively, so don't feel you have to push his respect level up or look towards ascending him, as his commander damage won't make a massive difference. Similarly, his relic doesn't really synergise well with this build. The Pirate's Flask will push up his command, which can help get a tiny amount of additional damage, but not too much, as well as a little bit of unit attack, so a little bit more damage. But the buff Combustion doesn't help at all, as you only get burn damage received against one enemy formation unit when you're using Corsairs, so I wouldn't worry too much about this. Overall, I think Azru Core is a really fun commander to use, and it's quite fun to see him used in interesting ways like this, almost becoming a mini Witch King and becoming the new king of burn damage. Anyway, with that, if you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting the like button, and please subscribe to see more Rise to War 2.0 content from me. I have had a few people join in memberships recently, so I also want to give them all a massive shout out and say thank you so much for joining. It means a massive amount to me and it does help motivate me to make more and more content, so I'm glad to see that you're all finding this useful. And with that, I've been HJW Gaming and I really hope to see you on the next one.